I should have seen it coming. I really should have. After all, it wasn't the first time my parents had overlooked me in favor of my sister, but this time, it wasn't just some small, forgettable slight. This time, it was the final straw. For years, I had been the responsible one, the one who worked long hours, saved diligently, and put family first. While my younger sister, Lisa, 25F, drifted through life without a care in the world, I picked up the slack. When she maxed out her credit cards, I helped pay them off. When she lost yet another job, my parents covered her rent. When she crashed her car, they bought her a new one. Meanwhile, I had spent the last 2 years planning the perfect gift for my parents, a luxury vacation to Greece. I saved every extra penny, booked 5-star hotels, arranged private tours, and even secured business class tickets. This was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip, something just for us to enjoy together. But when the day finally came, my mother smiled and ripped it away from me. I arrived at my parents' house early that morning, suitcase in hand, ready to drive them to the airport. That's when I saw Lisa standing on the porch. She had a suitcase. My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom beamed. "Oh, honey, we decided Lisa should go instead of you." I blinked. Instead of me? I looked at Lisa, expecting some kind of guilt, some kind of hesitation. Instead, she just shrugged. "You work too much, anyway. I needed this break, my gift, my trip. I could barely breathe, but I planned this. I paid for everything." My voice was shaking. Dad finally looked up from his phone. "It's not a big deal. You can always take another trip later." I stared at them. They had made the decision without even telling me. Like I wasn't even part of it. Like I didn't matter. I don't remember much of what I said after that. Maybe the first nodded. Maybe I muttered something polite. All I know is that, within minutes, I was driving them to the airport like nothing was wrong. Lisa chatted the entire way, giddy about the trip. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see that TikTok about Santorini? I can't wait to take pictures there. Do you think we'll have time to shop?" Mom laughed. "Of course, sweetie. We'll figure it out when we get there." They didn't even notice I wasn't part of that we anymore. Dad cleared his throat. "Thanks for driving us, kiddo. I know this must feel unusual. That was the word he picked?" I looked at him in the rearview mirror. "That's an interesting way to put it, Dad." He shifted uncomfortably. Lisa leaned forward, flashing a fake smile. "You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you letting me go. I could never have afforded this on my own." I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. But I forced a smile. "Of course, Lisa. Enjoy the trip." By the time we reached the airport, my patience was gone. I helped them unload their bags, biting my tongue the entire time. Mom hugged me. "Thank you for understanding, dear. This means a lot to us and to Lisa." I nodded stiffly. "Sure, Mom." Lisa wheeled her bag toward the entrance, flashing me one last grin. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." And then, just like that, they were gone, leaving me behind. Again. The drive home was a blur. My ears were ringing, my hands shaking. Their words replayed in my mind over and over again, each one cutting deeper than the last. "You can always take another trip later. Lisa needed this more. Don't make this a big deal, Violet." I parked in my driveway, turned off the engine, and just sat there, staring at nothing, fuming. I had spent years sacrificing for them. Years trying to earn their love, their respect, their approval. And for what? So they could replace me without a second thought? No, not this time. I got out of the car, walked into my house, and grabbed my laptop. Then I canceled everything. One by one, I took it all back. The luxury hotels, canceled. Private tours, refunded. The airline upgrades, revoked. They could still go, sure, but they wouldn't be staying in 5-star resorts. They wouldn't be sipping champagne on a sunset cruise. They wouldn't be enjoying the trip I planned for us, not on my dime. A few hours later, the calls started. I was waiting for them. I ignored the first one, and the second. By the third, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. Mom's voice hit me like a hurricane. "Violet, what did you do? The hotel won't let us check in. Our reservation is missing." I smirked. "Oh, that's weird. Maybe you should call Lisa. After all, she's the one you chose to bring." A long pause. Then Mom's voice, sharp and panicked. "This isn't funny, Violet. Fix it. Now." I laughed. "No." Then I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt free. I turned off my phone. Not permanently, just for the night. Just long enough to enjoy the silence. Because I knew what was coming. My parents weren't the type to accept consequences. They were the type to push, to manipulate, to guilt trip until they got what they wanted. And I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not this time. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 32 unread messages. I made myself a cup of coffee before reading any of them. Because if they could choose Lisa over me without a second thought, I could at least enjoy my morning in peace. Finally, I scrolled through the messages. Mom 6:42 a.m. Violet, the hotel says our reservation was canceled. You need to fix this. Dad 7:13 a.m. Call your mother back. This is getting ridiculous. Lisa 8:07 a.m. Are you serious? Mom 8:15 a.m. We can't book another hotel. Everything is full. What did you do? Lisa 8:22 a.m. You're being so childish. We're stranded because of you. Dad 8:40 a.m. Fix this. Now. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered how easily they had dismissed me. You can take another trip later. Lisa needed this more. Don't make this a big deal, Violet. So I did what they did. I ignored them. By noon, my phone was ringing again. I sighed, debating whether I should even answer. But I was in a good mood, and I was curious. So I picked up, Violet. Mom's voice exploded through the speaker. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. What did you do? She shrieked. I took a sip of my coffee. I don't know what you're talking about. You canceled everything, she yelled. The hotels, the tours, even the airline upgrades. I smiled. Oh, that. Yes, that. She was seething. I could picture it perfectly, her pacing in some airport lobby, gripping her phone with white knuckles, humiliated that her perfect vacation had collapsed around her. Good. We had to stay in some disgusting motel last night, she continued. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I laughed. Because that was the thing, wasn't it? It wasn't about me. It wasn't about how they had hurt me. It was about them, their embarrassment, their inconvenience, their ruined vacation. And suddenly, all that guilt I had been holding on to, it vanished. Violet, she snapped. Fix this. I leaned back in my chair. No. Silence. For the first time in her life, my mother was speechless. Then, a quiet, dangerous voice. What do you mean, no? I exhaled slowly. I mean, no, Mom. You and Dad made a choice. You picked Lisa over me. You didn't ask me. You didn't even warn me. You just assumed I'd accept it. Well, guess what? I didn't. And I'm not going to fix the mess you created. Another silence. Then, a strangled laugh. Oh my God. You are being so dramatic. That word. Dramatic. Like I was just throwing a tantrum. Like I hadn't been overlooked and dismissed my entire life. Like I was the problem. I clenched my jaw. Enjoy your vacation, Mom, I said coldly. Then I hung up. The next call came an hour later. This time, it was Lisa. I debated ignoring it, but something told me this one would be fun, so I picked up. Wow, she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. You've really outdone yourself this time. I smirked. You're welcome. What is wrong with you? She whined. You just couldn't let me have this, could you? I raised an eyebrow. Have what? The trip I planned? The vacation I paid for? She scoffed. Oh my God, stop acting like this is some huge betrayal. It was just a trip. I laughed. Yeah, just a trip. Just something I spent years saving for. Just something that was supposed to be for me. But sure, Lisa, tell me again how I am the one in the wrong, she huffed. It's not my fault Mom and Dad picked me. I grinned. You're right. And it's not my fault they're stuck in a dumpy motel right now either. You are so petty. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying this. Call it whatever you want, Lisa. But for the first time in my life, I'm not cleaning up your mess, she gasped. I didn't make a mess, I smiled. Exactly. Then I hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the second choice. I felt like I had won. I knew my parents wouldn't let this go, so I prepared. I blocked Lisa. I muted Mom and Dad. And I waited. Sure enough, when they got home 3 days later, They showed up at my house. I didn't let them in. Instead, I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as my mother fumed. "This is not how families treat each other," she spat. I raised an eyebrow. "Funny, I was thinking the same thing," Dad sighed. "Violet, just be reasonable. It was one trip." I stared at him. "You really don't get it, do you?" I said softly. "They didn't. They never would. Because to them, I would always be the backup option. The reliable one. The kid they didn't have to worry about. But they were wrong. Because I wasn't their doormat anymore." I took a deep breath. Then I smiled. "Thanks for stopping by," I said. "But I think we're done here." Mom's eyes widened. "You don't mean that." I nodded. "I do." Then I closed the door. And this time, I didn't look back. I didn't expect them to give up easily. People like my parents don't accept consequences, they try to rewrite them. They weren't going to reflect on their choices. They weren't going to apologize. No, they were going to make this my fault, and I wasn't going to let them. For the first few days after I shut the door in their faces, my phone was silent. It was eerie, unnatural. I knew them too well. They weren't ignoring me. They were planning their next move. And sure enough, a week later, it began. Step 1. The guilt trip. It started with an email from my mother. A long, dramatic email. Subject: "We need to talk, Violet. I don't know what's happened to you. I don't know how you became so cruel. We are your parents. We raised you, we did everything for you, and this is how you repay us? By humiliating us? By stranding us in a foreign country? Your father is heartbroken. I haven't been able to sleep. Even Lisa is upset. She doesn't understand why you hate her so much. Please, let's be a family again. We can fix this. But you have to stop this childish behavior. Call me." I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hands. I laughed. Because of course she didn't apologize. Of course she twisted the story. Of course she made herself the victim. There was no mention of how they betrayed me. No acknowledgement of how they dismissed me. No recognition that I had every right to be angry. It was just more manipulation, and I was done falling for it. I didn't respond. The next day, a text from my father came through. "Dad, enough of this. Violet. You've made your point. Now fix it." I shook my head. They still thought I was going to cave. They still thought I was the same pushover they had always controlled. I blocked his number. Since my parents couldn't get to me directly, they started using other people. The first was my Aunt Karen. She called me out of nowhere, her voice sickly sweet. "Hi, sweetie. Just wanted to check in. Your mom told me there was a little misunderstanding with the vacation." I rolled my eyes. "A little misunderstanding?" I let her ramble for a minute before cutting in. "Aunt Karen, did Mom tell you that she replaced me on the trip I paid for? That she didn't even bother to ask me?" Silence. Then a hesitant laugh. "Well, family makes sacrifices sometimes, dear. You know that." I smiled. "Exactly. And I decided I wasn't going to make any more sacrifices for them." Click. I hung up. Blocked her too. Next came my cousin Jake. A text, this time. "Jake, hey, not trying to take sides, but maybe just apologize. It's not worth losing family over a trip." I took a deep breath. Then I typed back, "Me, it was never just about the trip." Blocked. They tried a few more people. A neighbor. An old family friend. Each time the message was the same. "They're your parents. You should be grateful. Lisa is your sister. You should forgive her. You're being unreasonable." And each time, I said nothing. I let them scream into the void. Because I had finally learned the truth. They weren't trying to fix this. They weren't trying to make it right. They were just trying to pull me back into my place. And I wasn't going back. After weeks of silence, I thought they had finally given up. I was wrong. One morning, I got a text from an old high school friend. "Erin, hey, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook?" I frowned. I had my mom blocked, so I had Erin send me a screenshot, and there it was. A long, passive, aggressive post. It's heartbreaking when your own child turns against you. When you raise them, love them, sacrifice for them, only to have them throw you away like garbage. I don't know where we went wrong with Violet. We gave her everything, and yet, she repays us with cruelty. But we won't stop loving her. We won't stop praying for her. Hopefully, one day, she'll realize that family is everything. I burst out laughing. Because, wow. Just wow. They really went full martyr mode. They made it sound like I abandoned them. Like I was some selfish, ungrateful monster who had destroyed the family. Not one mention of Lisa. Not one mention of why I cut them off. Not one mention of what they did, just a performance for sympathy. I closed the screenshot, and I did nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself, because I didn't need to. The people who knew me really knew me already understood. And anyone who believed my parents' sob story, they were never on my side to begin with. Weeks passed, then months. I built a life that had nothing to do with them. I traveled on my own terms. I focused on my career. I surrounded myself with people who actually respected me. And one day, while sipping coffee on my balcony, I realized something. I didn't miss them, not even a little. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Months later, I got one last email from my mother. Short, simple. "I hope you're happy." I smiled. I was. I really, truly was. I deleted the email. Then I went back to enjoying my life, because I had finally won. Cutting them off should have felt bigger. I thought I'd wrestle with guilt, spend nights second-guessing myself, maybe even feel a little lost without them in my life. But none of that happened. Instead, I felt light, like I had been carrying a weight for years without realizing it, and now it was finally gone. For the first time in my life, I was free, and I was never going back. I focused on myself, not my parents, not on Lisa, just me. I threw myself into work, picked up new hobbies, and actually started enjoying my life. I traveled alone, not in some desperate, "I have something to prove" way, but because I could, because I had spent years prioritizing other people's happiness. It was time to prioritize mine. My first solo trip was to Italy. I had planned this trip for them. Now, it was for me, and I made it mine. I wandered through the streets of Rome, ate gelato on the Spanish steps, and sipped espresso in tiny cafes without anyone whining about the schedule. I didn't have to check in with anyone. I didn't have to make sure Lisa was comfortable. I didn't have to listen to my mom complain about how expensive everything was while drinking wine I paid for. It was just me, and it was perfect. Back home, I made more changes. I cut ties with everyone who tried to guilt-trip me into making amends, blocked them, ignored them. Because I had learned something important, people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. People who just want control will call you selfish for having them. And I was done letting people like that have a say in my life. A few months passed. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a text from Lisa. "Lisa, so, you're just never talking to us again?" I stared at my phone. I could have ignored her, but I didn't. I had one last thing to say. "Me? You made your choice. So did I." She didn't respond, and I didn't care. I redecorated my apartment. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I swapped out the old furniture my parents had given me, the things that reminded me of them. I replaced them with things that felt like me. I started taking dance classes. I had always wanted to, but growing up, Lisa was the dancer. Mom made sure I knew that was her thing. Well, screw that. I wasn't competing with her anymore, so I danced. And it made me happier than I ever expected. One day, while journaling, I wrote down a simple question: what do I want next? For the first time in my life, I didn't have to filter that answer through anyone else's needs. Not my parents, not Lisa's, not the expectations they had placed on me, just mine. And the possibilities? Endless. Months turned into a year, then another. The silence from my family was deafening. But I wasn't listening anyway, until one day, out of nowhere, an email arrived. From my mother. Subject: "Time heals all wounds, Violet. It's been too long. I think we both know this has gone on long enough. Your father and I miss you. Lisa misses you. I'm sure we've all made mistakes, but at the end of the day, we're family. We can't change the past, but we can move forward. Let's meet for dinner and talk. I know you don't hate us. I know deep down you still love your family. Call me." I read it twice, and then I laughed. Because of course she framed it like this. Like we had both made mistakes. Like we were equally at fault. Like she hadn't discarded me without a second thought and then acted shocked when I refused to play along. No apology, no responsibility, just more manipulation. I didn't even bother responding. I just deleted it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't some phase. I was really, finally, completely done. They had lost me, and I didn't feel a single ounce of regret. I spent that evening on my balcony, watching the sun set over the city. I had built a new life, a better life, a life that was mine, and nothing, not my parents, not Lisa, not their guilt trips, was ever going to take that from me again. The email from my mother wasn't the last attempt. I knew it wouldn't be. Because people like her, people like my family don't just let go. They don't change. They don't reflect. They just try different angles until they find the one that pulls you back in. But this time, there was nothing left to pull. I didn't reply to her email. I didn't block her either. I just let it sit, unread, unanswered. Because I knew her. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She wasn't reaching out because she regretted what she did. She was reaching out because she hated losing control. And that wasn't my problem anymore. Instead, I focused on the one thing that actually mattered, my life. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I kept traveling, not in a frantic, look how independent I am way. Just because I could. I spent 2 weeks in Japan, wandering through Kyoto's quiet temples, eating the best ramen of my life in tiny shops where no one spoke English, and realizing how small my world used to be. I went to Portugal and spent days getting lost in Lisbon's winding streets, drinking wine by the ocean, and letting time slow down in a way it never had before. And the best part? I never once had to explain myself to anyone. No one was asking where I was. No one was making me feel guilty for enjoying my life. No one was waiting for me to come home and fix their problems. It was just me, my passport, and the world. And for the first time, that was enough. Back home, things were just as good. I got a huge promotion. At work, one I wouldn't have even had time to consider before. I made new friends. Not just casual acquaintances, but real friends. People who actually listened when I talked. People who cared about what I wanted, not what I could do for them. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I actually belonged. Not because I was useful, not because I was fixing things, just because I was me. Months passed. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. I did, and I immediately regretted it. Violet? It was Lisa. I could have hung up. I should have, but I didn't. Because some small, stupid part of me wanted to know. Not because I missed her, not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I was curious. So I said, "What do you want?" She sighed. "So, you're really doing this, huh?" I blinked. "Doing what?" This whole "I don't have a family" act. I almost laughed. Because wow, even now she couldn't just say it. She couldn't admit what happened. She had to make it seem like I was the one being dramatic. Typical. "I'm not doing anything, Lisa," I said. "I just stopped playing the game." She scoffed. "Oh my God, you're so full of yourself." And there it was. That same bitterness, the same attitude she had always had. Like I was the bad guy for finally putting myself first. Like I was the selfish one for no longer being her safety net. I sighed. "Did you actually have something to say? Or did you just call to insult me?" A long pause. Then, a change in her voice. "Mom's not doing great." I didn't respond, because I knew exactly what she was doing. It was always the next move in the cycle. When guilt trips didn't work, when manipulation failed, they weaponized tragedy. "She's been really upset," Lisa continued. "She misses you, Violet. We all do." I clenched my jaw. "She cries about you all the time," she pushed. "Do you even care?" There it was. The bait. The emotional hook. The thing that used to pull me right back in. I exhaled slowly. Then I asked the one question that actually mattered. "Has she apologized?" Silence. A long, uncomfortable silence. Then Lisa's voice, small and hesitant. "She doesn't think she did anything wrong." I smiled. There it was. The truth. She didn't regret what she did. She just regretted losing control. "Then I guess we have nothing to talk about," I said. Lisa snapped. "Oh my God! Violet! Grow up! Do you seriously think you're so perfect? You act like we're monsters, but you're the one abandoning your family." And that's when I finally laughed, because I had heard it all before. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every way they tried to turn it around, make me the villain, rewrite history. And it was pathetic. "You don't get it, do you?" I said. Lisa huffed. "Get what?" "I'm happy." Silence. "I wake up every day, and I don't think about you. I don't think about Mom. I don't think about Dad. I don't think about what you need, or what you expect from me, or how I can make your lives easier." I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, my life is mine, and I love it. Lisa didn't speak. She didn't know what to say, because she had never actually considered that I might be better off without them, that I wasn't waiting to be pulled back in, that I was done. Finally, completely, forever, I let the silence stretch. Then, before she could find the words, I hung up. And this time, I blocked her. For good. I stepped out onto my balcony, feeling the sun on my skin, hearing the city hum around me. My phone was silent, and for the first time in my life, I knew it would stay that way, because I had made my choice, and nothing, not my parents, not Lisa, not their guilt, or their tactics, was ever going to change it. Hanging up on Lisa was the easiest thing I had ever done. Blocking her was even easier. I thought maybe I'd feel something, regret, sadness, even guilt, but I didn't. I felt free. For the first time, I really knew that I had won, and I would never, ever go back. Life without them was quiet, not in a bad way, not in the way that makes you feel alone. It was the kind of quiet that felt calm, the kind of quiet that meant no more stress, no more drama, no more being the person everyone relied on while getting nothing in return. I loved it. I thrived. Work was better than ever. Without the constant family stress weighing me down, I found myself excelling. I got another promotion, a huge one, the kind of promotion that would have made my parents proud if they had ever actually cared about my success. But they never had, so I didn't tell them. It was mine. And for once, I didn't need their validation. I expanded my world. I traveled more. I took a spontaneous trip to Bali, just because I could. I spent my days reading on the beach, hiking through jungles, and eating the best food of my life. I made new friends, people who actually valued me. And the best part? I never once had to explain myself. No one was calling me selfish. No one was guilting me for not including family. No one was waiting for me to come home and fix their problems. It was just me and my life, and it was perfect. Months passed, then a year, and then, one day, an email arrived from my mother. Subject: I hope you're happy, Violet. I don't know what to say anymore. You've made your choice. You've cut us out. You've abandoned your family. Your father and I are heartbroken. We don't understand how you can just walk away from everything we've built. But I hope you're happy. I hope whatever life you've chosen is worth it. Just know that when you finally come to your senses, we'll still be here. We'll always love you. I stared at the email for a long time, not because it hurt, not because it made me feel anything at all, but because I realized something. She still thought this was temporary. She still thought I'd wake up one day and crawl back. She still thought I'd realize my mistake and beg to be part of the family again. She didn't understand. She never would, because this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a fight that needed fixing. This was permanent. This was me choosing my own life, and I had never, ever been happier. I didn't respond. I never would. I closed my laptop, stepped onto my balcony, and watched the city lights flicker around me. This was my world now. No more Lisa, no more guilt, no more waiting for love that would never come. Just me. And that was more than enough. I had built a life without them, and I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Because the truth is, sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It isn't fighting. It isn't proving a point. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply being happy. And I was. I really, truly was.